2025, and I'm very pleased to have Etna Nibranigan here with me today. And Etna has suffered some ill effects, to say the least, from the jab, and I would like to get her story. Etna, thank you very much for coming on with me today.
Thank you, Declan.
Now, let's start with before you got the jab. What was your life like before you got the jab? Did you have any medical issues, or were you just more or less a normal person living your life, no care in the world?
Yeah, well, I was fitter than I'd ever been. I was actually bored during the pandemic. Um, I had uh, I'd always worked very hard, quite physically hard. So I found it very difficult to be stuck at home, and I'd ended up messing about with a wee fit and was having great fun chasing dogs up mountains and all sorts of stuff, and thought I'm going to take this outside. So I was actually up to 5K running outside. And at age 61, that was a big deal for me. I'd never done anything like that before. So I was ready to sign up for my first mini marathon. So I was very fit. I'd never done any sports. I'd never enjoyed sports, and I'd never done swimming or anything like that. I didn't enjoy any kind of sports. So I was in the best shape I'd ever been at age 61. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons I'm still alive, because physically my body was in very good shape.
It's interesting you should say that because I'm somewhat similar to myself, and many people are in the same boat. So you would say that at the age 61, after getting a little bit of a desire to exercise, that you're actually in better shape than you would have been at 41, 20 years earlier. So you're actually in great shape for your age at the age of 61 4 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Yeah. I'd never done, as I say, I'd never done any sports or anything like that. But I was always quite a very strong person, because I had taken on work that had meant that I had worked physically hard. I had been a dog groomer. I had a dog grooming business in my 20s. So I was carting around big dogs, carrying them upstairs and doing all sorts of interesting stuff along my life. And then I had chosen to work with people after seeing my father die at home and watching the people that worked with him. I came home after his death saying, I'd like to be able to do that for other people, the comfort they gave us. So I had worked with elderly people at the end of their lives and was with people. I was with people at the end of their lives when they died. So I had worked hard, physical work. I chose to do it. So I had been a very, very strong person. Now I'm not. I'm as weak as a kitten. I got the shock of my life about 2 weeks ago at my cousin's baby's christening and then birthday party for a 2 year old. And I picked up a year old baby and I couldn't walk across the room with them, you know. And such a shock, because I'd always prided myself on being so strong. I couldn't walk across the room with a 1 year old baby, you know,
So it was a
to
big part of your
have a bit
life
of
giving
banter.
comfort both physically and mentally before you decided to take the jab. Coming,
Yes,
what
yes.
what made you decide to actually take the jab on the 18th day of May 2021?
Terror, fear and terror. I don't know how they got me. I really don't. I still can't believe they got me, because um, I'd had the 1968 Hong Kong flu when I was a child. And I remember on Christmas Day being carried down the stairs, um, and I didn't care about Christmas presents, and I couldn't eat my Christmas dinner. And I used to love my Christmas dinner. And I can remember the taste of them trying to give me some Christmas dinner, and I just couldn't. And I remember being carried back up the stairs, and we had twin beds, myself and my sister. There was just the two of us growing up. And I remember seeing her lying in bed, and she couldn't lift her head off the pillow. And I remember, you know, just illness like that I've never experienced since, until now. When people would have said, "Oh, I've had the flu," no, this kind of flu killed people, even little children. And so I had experienced, you know, death defying flu in 1968 when a lot of people died. And my hobby was genealogy. And at the time, I was putting my uncle's life's work online, where he had traced our family tree, two lines of our family tree back to when records began in 1690. And I was putting all his work, 30 years of work before the internet, where he went around parish offices and sat in people's houses and all this amazing work that he'd done. I had taken over from him. And I was looking at the 1918 flu, um, where my grandmother's sister died, and she lived in a tiny little townland called Grange Ballieu, which is just up the road from here. And all it is a crossroads. There isn't even a shop there. There never was. It's a crossroads. And the 1918 flu got to her there. A 28-year-old died from that. So when this COVID thing came around, I believed that there was something to fear. And but I was also very much aware of the fear of vaccines. I, I was, I had read up on the HPR8, not HPR8, the ones that my brain is playing tricks with me now. The 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 vaccine that's given to young girls, you know.
Yes,
Uh,
I know the one you're
that's
talking
playing
about.
tricks
Yeah,
with me. The website is Regret,
Stratisol or
you know.
whatever it is. Uh,
Gardasil, yes.
yeah,
So I was
very,
very
very
much
dangerous.
aware of that and would have spoken to people and say, you know, do not allow your teenagers to go for that. And I was also very aware, although I hadn't done any reading on it, I was also very aware of the link to autism. I was very aware of that. And I had met so many people that had said to me, my child or my grandchild was a perfectly healthy baby meeting their milestones, and then bang, overnight they were a different child. I was very much aware of that. So I was frightened of this injection. I didn't want it. I really didn't want it. But the politicians at the time are um, our Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, went through the media, the mainstream media in Ireland, and said if people of my age group didn't take this particular one, AstraZeneca, if they didn't take it, they went to the bottom of the queue. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. I wasn't in contact with the people that I know now. All I had at the time was Google and mainstream media. And I was being told, take this or you don't get any. And I was stuck. And my research at the time, I was only getting what mainstream media were giving me. I wasn't reaching the places that were hidden to me at the time. I was really stuck. I contacted my, I was in with my GP at the time, and she said, we have no guidance. And I like my GP. I do like her. So she was being given nothing. Um, I wasn't finding anything when I looked at the internet because it was all hidden. Everything was hidden at the time. And I went to the vaccination centre. I spoke to reception. She sent me to two nurses. I spoke to them. They called the pharmacists. Now, how many people do you know of that got this? That I went to that much trouble to what was available to me at the time. And the people that I know now that were out on the streets and whatever, I just didn't see any of those people at the time. They weren't visible to me. I live out in the sticks in Clogherhead, away from where the people that were standing there. I met them very shortly afterwards, but not in time. You know, maybe I was meant to tell my story. I do believe that now, you
Well,
know.
hopefully you'll
So
get a
the
good chance.
pharmacist, yeah, the pharmacist came over and spoke to me and reassured me. And I was lied to that day. I was lied to. I was given none of the information that is relevant to what I have now. And when I got my freedom of information notes from that day, there was nothing about my conversation with that pharmacist. And I worked in the arena of hospitals and so on. And all of those things are recorded. But yet it wasn't in my file when my file turned up. That wasn't given to me. So you know, it's always recorded, but that wasn't there when I got my notes because I am taking a legal case.
Okay, to summarize what you said there now, I think that you were driven by fear, and unfortunately, your
Mm.
knowledge was what instilled that fear into you. I have not heard anybody mention the Hong Kong flu in I do not know how long, years and years and
Yeah.
years.
Mm.
Most people, and we would be of the same generation, most people would not even remember the Hong Kong flu because at 1968 you would
8.
only be 7 or 8 years of age.
I
So
was 8.
it's somewhat
Yeah.
unusual that it would have a lasting impact upon you. But without
I was
researching the
very ill.
Hong Kong flu
Mm.
myself now, because I haven't heard mention of it in a long, long, long time. But the Hong Kong
Mm.
flu, of course, was turned out to be a bit of a fiasco, and the effects of the prevention of the Hong Kong flu was worse than the Hong Kong flu. But a lot of people died of the Hong Kong flu. So you were driven by
Mm.
fear, and you, of course, feared that this new flu was going to be a repeat, if not worse, than the Hong Kong flu.
I
You had
thought I
fear,
might die.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you
We
had
we
same,
exchanged our passwords and we wrote our wills.
yeah.
We genuinely thought one of us might be taken out, and in which case we'd have to make sure we'd be able to access bank accounts and pay bills if one of us died, or if both of us died, the kids, because Stuart's 4 kids live here and my daughter was living here at the time as well. So there were 7 of us living in the house, and we had to make sure that everybody'd be able to survive if one or both of us died. That was our mindset at the time, you know.
Okay, well, can you tell me if that was being your mindset, would that be extreme, or how does it compare with the mindset of the general population? Were most people somewhat as scared as you were, or was was the fear widespread? Now your fear seems to be very extreme, and you were remembering the Hong Kong flu. But for
Mm.
most people, would the fear be somewhat less than that, but still a great concern?
I think there was a lot of people in the same frame of mind as myself, and there are some people that still have it. But I mean, it didn't take me, well, when I say it didn't take me long for the fear to come down, I mean, I was still in that frame of mind in 2021. You know, this was, May 2021, I was still afraid. It wasn't that much longer after that that the fear dissipated. When I met the people that were handing out the leaflets and I started talking to them, and when, the penny dropped and I got sick and I started weighing up the odds of, and when I got COVID for the first time, I mean, I've had COVID twice, you know, when I started realizing that I had been scammed, you know, and I realized the lies I had been told, and that the excess deaths in 2020 were zero. There had been no excess deaths, and that we had been scammed and lied to, and that the excess deaths in Ireland only started in January 2021. That was really hard to take. That all those reports of the deaths had been a lie. People had died with COVID, not of COVID. That was very hard to take, that we had been lied to. Those people hadn't died of COVID at all, you know.
So
That
what
was
you're
hard to
saying
take.
there about excess deaths, you're comparing the deaths of a normal year, say 2019, to the following year, 2020, when supposedly
Mm.
huge numbers of people were dying, and the figures showed that the death numbers for both years were basically the same. And it was
Yeah,
not until the following year, when things should have been okay because everybody had been protected, that then the
yeah,
numbers increased. Now, getting
yeah. When
back
they
to the,
started the rollout, people
before,
started to die.
I want to finish up about the day you took the vaccine. When you were taking the vaccine, did you have three choices like we did in elsewhere, Pfizer, Moderna, and the AZ
No,
AstraZeneca? You had at that stage, you only had one choice, so you
yeah,
didn't have to make any decision.
no. I was told that I could only take AstraZeneca.
That was the
They,
only one. That was
uh,
the only one
that was the only
available, and
one.
you were very
That
eager to take it, so that's why you took the
No, I
AZ.
wasn't very eager at all. I wasn't very. I wanted more time, but they said no, you must take it now. I
Okay, so
wanted more time to
you
think
were
about it because I wasn't really happy about taking it. But they said if you don't take it now, you won't get any.
okay. So it was a take it or leave it, now or
Yeah.
never. They
And
knew
and then
exactly that they
then
had to
just
get
a
you.
matter of a few days later, then they said, no, we've changed our minds. you can always take it later if you want to.
Okay, by that time it was too late. You had already
It was
taken
too
it.
late. I'd already taken it.
How long after you took the jab did you notice or begin to experience what we'll call adverse reactions to it?
Well, it started pretty much straight away, but I tried not to think about it. I didn't want to focus on it because I had been concerned about taking it in the first place. I tried to not think about it, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So I had minor stuff. I had a sore arm. I had headaches. I had bruising. I had all the minor stuff that they talk about that you can have, but I tried not to let my head go into it. So I ignored it. But day 16, I went blind. You can't ignore that,
No,
you
you
know,
cannot ignore that.
you can't.
So,
So that happened during the night. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I had um, like a mesh across my eyesight. And I drew that out. I actually drew out what it looked like and laminated it so that I could, rather than try and explain it to doctors, it lasted for a while. This was 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I made my way out to the bathroom. Our ensuite has another door that comes out the other side of the bathroom. And I didn't want to wake my husband. So I went into the ensuite, went out the other side of it, switched on the light, and stood in the bathroom and realized, yes, I'm definitely blind. And I could just about make out the outline of a dark towel that we had in the bathroom at the time. And that was it. Everything else was white. So I was
so as
blind.
terrifying as that moment was, also, of course, at that moment, you had to accept what you subconsciously felt that the other minor ailments were actually a result from day one
I
of getting
wasn't thinking
the jab.
about the vaccine at that
Yeah,
stage.
yeah, but you were
What went
just
through my head,
concerned.
then
Yeah,
I'm logical and quite pragmatic. So I went, I can't drive. That was my first thought is my independence is gone, I can't drive. So there's things going through your head like bleed at the back of the brain, of the eyes.
yes,
You know, people can go blind overnight because they had a bleed. I'm thinking something catastrophic has happened. I'm now blind. And my automatic thought is, I'm not going to be able to drive, so I can't go anywhere independently anymore. So that's my thought. But then the eyesight came back. I don't know how long. I still don't know how long, maybe 15 minutes, something like that. Eyesight comes back, didn't even wake my husband, got back into bed, went to sleep, and I told him the following day. So then I get more of these episodes, but I don't go blind. And they're, the way I describe it was it's hexagonal shapes, honeycomb, lots and lots of these shapes all together. I get them again, but the really severe one, the first night, which was day 16, had vertical and horizontal lines through it as well. So the ones with the vertical and horizontal lines left me completely blind. But when I just got the hexagonal shapes, I could see with that. So that's the start of my neurological journey.
so, can we assume then that that day or the following day or whatever, you went to the doctor and you told him about these conditions? And what did the doctor reply to you?
Oh God, now I don't into minuscule details about
No,
this. I
it
can't
doesn't.
really.
I'm just talking
Oh,
in general. Yeah, we don't need to get into
the
the small
first,
little
the
things,
first,
but just to get
the
the
first
time.
journey was to the optician.
Yes.
So that was the first stop. Went to the optician. My eyes were perfect, so I didn't have to worry about that. So that was the first thing. Your eyes are okay. And I can't remember when the vaccine came in to the thing first, but then the headaches came, and the headaches were out of this world. That was when the headaches really came in, and then we knew, I knew that it was the vaccine. Then it really hit. We know this is the vaccine because the blood clots, I had bruising really bad, terrible bruising. So the whole thing, fell into place that. And then in July, the 10th, 11th of July, I had a massive incident where I was dying. I was going across, and that was huge. That was the big one. I was dying that much.
Can you repeat that now exactly? What happened on the 12th of July, did you say?
The 10th, 11th of July. The 10th of July was our 3rd wedding anniversary, myself and my husband. But to go out for a meal in Ireland at that time, the control thing was out of this world. It was dreadful. So the only way you could go for a meal in Ireland at the time was to stay a night in a hotel. So it was our 3rd wedding anniversary. We decided to go for a meal in Scholars. That was where we'd had our wedding breakfast. It's a hotel in Drogheda. So we booked into the hotel, went for a lovely meal. And that day, as we were walking through Drogheda, I had gone to a health food shop to pick up a couple of bits. I was trying out all these things to try and improve what was happening to me. And on the way back up through Drogheda, I met the first people that were handing out leaflets and stuff. And I stopped to talk to them and I said, I'm vaccine injured. I knew at this stage. I'd cancelled my 2nd injection. I had started talking to people about it. And I knew at this stage I was in trouble. I was getting really bad headaches and loads of different side effects at this stage, a lot of side effects. I was starting to do things to try and improve it. So I spoke to the people in West Street that were handing out leaflets and stuff, went back to the hotel. We had a lovely meal, a few glasses of wine, really nice night, nothing heavy, like, we're in, well, I was in my 60s at that stage. My husband wasn't yet. And we had a lovely night. And then 3 o'clock in the morning seemed to be when the things hit really badly. And I woke up and I knew that something really bad was happening. And I woke Stuart. And when I tried to speak to him, to say to him something terrible is happening, the message to my brain wasn't getting there. And I couldn't speak and I couldn't use my mouth. So I'm wakening him. And my arms and legs were moving. So I'm wakening him. This is hard to talk about, as you can imagine. And he's looking at me going, what? And I couldn't say anything. So I'm looking at him and my speech is gone. And I knew, like, I was feeling like I was drifting away from him. I was dying. I knew I was dying. I knew I was going, like, oh, it was the worst night of my life because I love him so much, like, and I knew I was going away from him. And I couldn't even say to him, help me, I couldn't even say, do something, So I'm going, what do I do? And I thought, pen and paper, write something down. So hotel room, open drawers, find a pen. There's always pen and paper in hotel, And I started pulling out the drawers and he's looking at me going, what's wrong? And of course, with COVID, they'd taken everything out of the hotel. There was nothing. Everything was bare. So I'm pulling the place apart. He doesn't know why I'm doing this. And then I think, I'll text, I'll type it. And that's just too hard, too complicated. And I still can't speak. So I start doing charades, and I'm going, trying to do 9. And he's going thumbs, fingers. And I'm going, no. And I'm trying to do this charades thing. And eventually he gets 1, 2, 3. And then I go, and I do that. And he goes, 9. And I go, yes. And I go, 9. He goes, 999, yes. He goes, ambulance. And I go, yes. It was horrendous. And then after a while, it's like the episode is eventually coming back. And when my speech starts to come back, and I'm going, I'm dying. And I'm hanging out of him. I don't want to leave you. I don't know how I came through that night. I don't know how I'm still alive from that night. That was the closest to death anybody can get and not die,
So after that night, you improved somewhat. Can you tell us now, bring us up to the present date? What is your condition today, we'll say?
Well, that was the biggest episode. The pain got worse and worse and worse. And you've seen the video of me in my car like the pain got to the point where I'd have that kind of pain like for days and days and days and days, where it just wouldn't stop. And it's like the equivalent of late labor. And looking back on that now, I know my inflammation just got to the point where I had like an encephalitis from inflammation, but I didn't know that. It took me a while to figure out what was going on. It's like my whole body was inflamed. But I didn't have that at that stage, you know. I got through that massive event in the hotel. An ambulance came and brought me to the hospital, and it's like they just completely dismissed me. And I had come through the event, and it was like I got my hospital notes afterwards, and they put me down as a panic attack, you know. And I'm so shook up afterwards, and we're sitting in the not emergency room, we're sitting in the waiting area, and I'm just going, I have to get out of here. I just want to go home. I was so tired. I needed to go home. So we just left the hospital. I mean, I used to work there. I know what they were doing. They had triaged me. They saw me as nothing wrong with me. They thought I was just after having some silly little episode. We needed to get out of there. And when I got the thing afterwards, they had just, you know, but when I got home, I was all electrically, you know, my electrical system had gone completely crazy. And when I lay down in bed, my left leg was coming like a foot off the bed by itself. You know, my left side was affected, which is the side I got the injection on, my left side. So I was completely affected electrically after that. So I'm not so bad electrically affected now. I have massive inflammation. So I'm taking a drug that I've been given. So there's so much to this. It's hard to explain it because it has turned into various different types of illness. I have an autoimmune problem, so my immune system's completely broken, and that almost killed me because gradually the inflammation built up to a point where my husband thought I was dead. How do I explain all this? The inflammation built up.
Let me.
It's hard to explain it.
Yeah, let me.
There was that section of it where I had the massive like break, and then once I got through that, electrically I was broken. And then the inflammation started off, which is an autoimmune problem. That's a different thing altogether. The inflammation build up. I'm now taking a thing that is suppressing my immune system. But the doctors have walked away on me for that. I have no consultants looking after me. So the drug that I was put on for headaches, which is topiramate, it's for seizures and for migraine. The maximum dose of that is 400 milligrams. I'm taking 650 by myself. And that suppresses my immune system. But they've walked away on me. Like they won't treat me. This is a tricky one, you know, to try and explain all this. So when my immune system starts to go back up again, I take a higher dose of it because it's all I can get. I can't see immunology. They won't refer me to immunology. They've just said, she's got migraine. That's it. They won't talk to vaccine injured people in Ireland. They'll only speak with people who've had long COVID. They won't speak to vaccine injured people in Ireland.
Okay, so you noticed that your nervous system was not working properly as it should, and you lost the ability to speak, even though you were trying to speak. Your just nervous system would not cooperate with the muscles and whatnot. Then you discuss about how your leg was coming off the bed by a foot. Can we assume that's more or less like what happens in a reflex reaction? It just jerked up with no conscious effort by yourself whatsoever.
Yeah, lots of people have that.
And then you discovered or were prescribed a drug to alleviate these symptoms.
I mean, this is over 4 years. So this,
Yes,
you
of
know,
course, yeah.
like a couple of years later,
Now,
that's settled down. But then the immune system goes crazy.
My
Mm.
understanding is that you were prescribed 20 milligrams of this drug that seemed to have some beneficial effect, but as your conditions grew worse, the dosage was increased, and the maximum dosage should have
Yeah.
been at, I think you said initially
For
200
no,
milligrams.
you start on 25 milligrams, and you're allowed to up it every fortnight by 25 milligrams.
Okay, so
So that's where I started,
you
and
quickly got up to the maximum anyway,
it
which was
took
400.
yeah, I hmm, it I start on 25 milligrams. You're allowed to up it every fortnight by 25 milligrams, and it worked beautifully. But they wouldn't negotiate with me when I was trying to discuss it with them to go to immunology for an immunosuppressant. They wouldn't allow me to do that, to get a proper immunosuppressant drug. They wouldn't allow me to go to immunology. So when it came to the point that I was reaching the maximum dose, and um, uh, when I was coming to the halfway point of the 200, my initial prescription was for 200 milligrams of this drug. And when I reached the 200, and I hadn't got the second prescription, which would have allowed me to go up to 400, and I reached the 200, I went up to inflammation again, which once my inflammation was up very high, I was actually dying. Stuart thought I was dead, you know. When my inflammation went to a very high level, I was dying, you know. This is the conversation we had about Vexus. I know I'm not explaining this very well. It's hard to explain it. The illness that I believe I have is Vexus, which is inflammation of the bone marrow. And when the inflammation gets to a high level, the body just ceases to function when the inflammation gets to a certain point. And when my inflammation was at a high level, I was dying. Stuart came in at one point. I had been asleep for something like 17 hours. And he shook me by the shoulders because he thought I was dead. When I opened my eyes and looked at him, his face he said, I thought you were dead. And a few weeks later on, when I was on this new drug, I mentioned it to him and I said, that time when you thought I was dead. And he said, that happened several times. He thought I was dead on several occasions. When my inflammation went to that high point, my body was just dying, you know. So I know where it goes when my inflammation gets to a very high level. So when I got to the 400, I knew what would happen if I didn't continue increasing the dose. So I got myself a nice little stash of this drug when I got to 400, and I continued to increase it. And at this point now, I'm on 650 milligrams. My doctors know I'm doing it because I have no choice. If I just stop, I'll die. And I've nobody looking after me. I have no doctors that are willing to talk to me. So I have to do what I have to do to stay alive.
So your doctor, this is very important. Your doctor now knows that you're taking 600 milligrams, and when the maximum dosage should be 400 or whatever it is.
No,
When he
I'm not going
gives
to sound, I wouldn't like it to sound like as if I'm complaining about my doctor, because her hands are tied. She's tried everything to get me to immunology.
that's what I was
She's
about
tried
to say.
everything to get me to a doctor that'll help me.
She has
It's
concluded
not,
that
it's not like, it's not like she's giving her approval. She's not
yeah,
giving her approval, but she knows that I'm doing what I have to do to stay alive. She's tried everything. She's done everything she can to give me a referral. Yeah, she's tried very hard, you know. And my GP is one of the reasons I'm still here, is that she's tried everything. You know, I've been to 3 different hospitals and they've all closed the door in my face, you know. And the
the,
reason that I got to the 3 hospitals is because she's gotten me referrals to those hospitals, and they've all closed the door in my face, you know. So I wouldn't
your,
say anything against my doctor. She's been
your
absolutely
doctor has
wonderful.
accepted that your only option is to
Yeah.
mitigate the pain, and if that means
Yeah,
increasing the
but
dosage,
it's
so
not the
be it.
pain. It's not the pain, it's the inflammation.
But the
I
inflammation,
I
yeah.
can't I can, I do different things that I do to stop the pain, and the pain still comes back at me, but the inflammation will kill me if I don't take immunosuppressants.
Can you describe the inflammation for those that mightn't be familiar with the condition?
Yeah. Well, if when my inflammation goes up, I get various different um, immune disease, autoimmune diseases. So I get the usual things. I get psoriasis, which I've never had in my life before. I got to 62 without having any autoimmune diseases, but I got psoriasis. It started with guttate psoriasis, which just looks like little dots. It's like measles kind of dots. And then it turned to full on psoriasis, which I get unfortunately on my face. So I get it's like a rash, and I get it in my eyebrows and so on. Psoriasis, everybody knows what psoriasis looks like. I get rheumatoid arthritis, which is very painful, and I get it in my fingers. And I get IBS, which is very annoying. And everybody knows the symptoms of that. I won't go into that. And the inflammation goes into my body, which is absolutely horrendous. I couldn't put, well, you've seen the video of me in my car, and the pain is like that. When my pain goes up, that is what I look like. The pain in my head, because it goes up into my head and I get like an encephalitis. So the pain in my head is indescribable. It's the intensity of just before you have a baby, and it just never stops, and you can't, painkillers don't work. I was on 90 Tylex a month, and I was taking Zomic as well, and you're allowed 6 doses of that a month. And they only work when you're up at a 9 or a 10. And 6 doses of that a month isn't very much, I can tell you. And that just goes on and on and on, to the point, there did come a point where I thought the only way of stopping this pain is to die. And I'm looking at Stuart going, we were only married 3 years when he became my carer, our lovely future that we planned together to grow old together. And he's now looking at this sick person, You
Well,
couldn't put it into
we
words.
don't know what the future is. There may be light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know yet. Can you
Well, I'm
tell?
an awful lot better than I was, and I'm
Yeah,
alive.
well,
And
look,
my
we have
sense of
to.
humor is back, and I have a quirky, quite zany sense of humor, and we do laugh. So it's not too bad. And I'm able to do some stuff for other people as well. And that has always been my life. So it's really nice to be able to do some stuff for other people, because I get a lot out of that, you know, and able to do stuff like this so other people know what's going on.
Now,
Very important.
you mentioned earlier about other people. You said that on your way to and fro down there in Drogheda, you encountered people on the street handing out leaflets.
Mm.
Who exactly were those people? Because I think we should
Yeah.
maybe give them a mention as well, since that's important.
They're local people from the town here. Well, John and Annie Taff actually were the people I met that day, and they've been very important. I don't see them as much as I used to see them, but they were very important people to me at the very beginning. They were like a lifeline. But the main people over the years that um, have been very important to me are Wake Up Era. Wake Up Era in you know, for getting the word out around Ireland. Barry Stone, Katrina, Edel, you know, Edel and
Okay, so
Navan,
those people have a group together. They're known as Wake Up
Michelle.
Era. They have a
Yeah,
website, wakeupera.com, and
that's
they're
right.
well known. But the
Yeah.
amazing thing is, they have been there from very, very early on in the
Mm.
situation. So that's 3+ years ago. And
Oh God, it's more than that.
yeah,
Yeah, more than that. Yeah, I mean, I'm over 4 years now since I put my arm out, and I met Barry very early on.
so it's somewhat amazing that these people were concerned from day one then.
Mm. And an awful lot of the work that they've done, they've dipped into their own pockets for that. very early on. And
Talking about
Michelle as well.
talking about pockets, has I assume this has greatly impacted your family financially.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had only married my husband in 2018. He's done all his stuff himself, but I can't work, and I loved my work. I really enjoyed my work. I was doing reflexology, and I had built to a certain point, that it was very important to me. Um, but that's hard to take, that I can't do that anymore, you know.
Now, you mentioned also that some people have somewhat been reluctant to see you and perhaps believe that it's not real, your ailments at all. Can you just dwell upon that
Yeah,
for a moment and give us a little bit of an
yeah,
update?
yeah. Well, the thing about it is that, well, I don't go out when I'm not sick. I don't go out when I'm sick. Sorry, I don't go. Obviously, when I'm in pain and when I'm not well, obviously I'm not out. And when I do go out, it's it's not obvious. You can't see it. So people are inclined to, um, they say, "Oh, you look great," and it's very nice of them to say that and all that, but it's a bit, people people are inclined to assume that I'm not too bad, that everything's fine, and it can be a bit annoying. People expect a lot, and I'm hoping that my brain is okay to try and get this. There's a part of this that is important, and I did a post the other day. Um, we get used. The vaccine injured get used, and I do find that very, very hard to take. And I hope that I'm able to explain this properly. But there's been a few times over the last short while that I've felt very much used by people. Not just me, but the vaccine injured. I like interviews like this. I like doing podcasts like this. Um, but there have been a couple of times recently that I really felt that me or the vaccine injured were really been, used for other people's agendas. And it's happened so many times over the last 4 years that it's really wound me up. You know, there was and I'm going to say it out straight because I don't like being lied to, and I don't like when somebody is feathering their own nest, if you know what I mean. A doctor came along to a coffee morning recently, and then uh, Marcus de Bruin came to the last Wake Up Era coffee morning. It's a support group for vaccine injured, support group, you know. And he came along, and later on, then at a, at a in an interview on a radio show, he said that he was invited. He wasn't invited. He invited himself along. And then he went on without the permission of the person that he was talking about, went on to discuss somebody else's, one of the people that was bereaved. He went along on in the radio program to discuss the person's case without asking them, could he talk about them on a radio show? Is he talking about me somewhere else that he hasn't asked, could he talk about me? And then I find out that he has completely lied to me when he was talking to me at the coffee morning. Because if I had known that he has been injecting people, he came and he sat at our support group when, if I had known he'd been injecting people for a couple of years, I wouldn't have wanted to sit beside him, to be honest with you. I wouldn't want him sitting at our support group meeting. He told me a lie. He sat there and he said that when the letter was put in his hand that he needed to sign to inject people, he told me to my face when the letter was handed to him that he needed to sign to inject people. He said, I closed my practice. No, he didn't. It was only when he was given a contract to sign for injecting children. He told me a pack of lies. pack of lies. So he did,
Well, it'd be very
and
sad
went
to
on
think.
to tell a completely different story to somebody else a few days later.
It'd be
And he
sad to
never
think.
got permission to tell somebody else's story on a radio show. You know, he's looking for people to go and support him at his, you know, at his hearing.
Well, all I've got to say to that is it'll be sad to think that people are trying to feather their own nests on the misery of others, etc. But we
Yeah, I
do
mean,
see
he
that
sat
in life.
beside me at a support group meeting and then went and told a whole big pack of lies on a radio show without getting our okay.
I don't
You know,
know.
and that's the second time in like a fortnight that somebody has used the vaccine injured to do something that they wanted to do because there was to be a court case about something,
Yes,
and
well, we will
I'm
likely
getting shit
see a
thrown
lot of
at me for that as well, you
we will
know?
likely see a lot of people backtracking on what they did and what they said and whatnot. But we'll move on to that because I don't really know too much about
Yeah.
this fellow you speak of
Yeah.
and
I know. You see,
the
like
two
people
sides to
seem
every
to
story.
forget that they're dealing with people who are really, really ill, you know? And these kind of things that are happening, they're forgetting that they're dealing with sick people. And they think they're, you know, when they're doing stuff like that, it's like my solicitor with my case. At one stage, he rings me up and he said, he says, I've been looking for an answer to this for the last 6 months and you can't make up your mind. In that space of time, my husband thought I was dead like 3 times. And the solicitor saying to me, you can't make up your mind. You know, he's talking about vaccine cases that he's been dealing with. We're all children. It was the parents that were dealing with the thing. We're trying to deal with this ourselves and we're at death's door, you know. And he's wondering why I haven't answered this thing when I'm half dead and I can't think. Like I was having brain crashes, you know. It's
Mo-
tough being vaccine injured, you know. It
Moving
is really
along a
hard.
little because the time is passing. You did
Yeah,
show
yeah.
on a video that I watched a little device that you say helps you quite a lot. Can you show us that device and just
Mm,
explain exactly what it is and what it does?
yeah, bioresonance. I have 2 of them. They're they're frequency medicine, and I could have had that one on a different program to keep me on the straight and narrow. Um, I did sidetrack off a good bit there, and I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Um,
We're just having a chat.
probably,
Where it goes, it goes.
yeah, probably going into the conversation about the early trauma of nearly dying. That can knock me for 6. It's hard to get the head back on straight after talking about stuff like that. I do have PTSD, and I'm finding it very hard to get the help I know I need for that. I know I need to talk to a psychologist, kind of, you know, try and get some help for that trauma because I do find it very difficult to come back from it when I talk about it, you know. But anyway, these devices are very, very good. The This one here, this is Trinity. So it comes with like 120 programs, and uh, you can then add on extra programs after that, which I've done, and I use that every single day since I got it. So there's different frequencies in it. Um, each program has several other frequencies inside the program. So it you set whatever program you want in it, and it gives you different frequencies for each program.
Now,
So
when you does it play an audio or how
no,
exactly does it work?
no. Um, I probably should say to you that since I got hit with since I got jabbed, I'm transmitting as well as being hit with problems electrically. I know it sounds insane, doesn't it? Um, so I'm very sensitive to energies coming at me or signals coming at me. Like, the M50 motorway in Dublin. When I drive down the M50, there's a power station on one side. I could get hit passing, going past that. So when I'm driving past it, at any particular time, I could get hit by the power station, which will put me to 10 out of 10 pain, like the bells at my brother's house. I don't know if there's 5G in that or whatever, but that was what happened to me from the bells going at his house. I never know when I'm going to get hit by something. But also, after I was injected, the the TV in the sitting room changing stations and putting going through um, the remote control was at the far side of the room to me, and I thought it was beside me because I thought I'd leaned on it, and the television went into Netflix, picked a user, changed the genre, picked a genre. And the one fear I have is horror films with screamy witch faces and ghosts and all this kind of thing. I hate those things. And that's what it found and put that on. Technology won't work when I'm around. I have to leave the room so printers can work and stuff like that. I'm transmitting as well as being affected by stuff. And it has this has really affected me since I've been injected. So this stuff seems to steady me down. So
So what you
I know
what you
it
what you
sounds
seem to
like
be
a conspiracy theory, but it is
what you are
happening.
claiming there is that you are like a human antennae or aerial that
Yes.
actually transmits a frequency as in an electrical wave or a radio wave that will
Yeah.
affect the remote control on your TV. That
Yes.
is what you are saying.
I've had to unplug stuff. I've had to unplug stuff because we'd be sitting watching the TV and the radio that's beside the TV. I know you're looking like you're going to laugh.
No, I'm not because I would be very. First of all, people are not understanding of. Let me make a comparison. When they invented radar, for example, it's something that cannot be seen or it cannot be felt, it cannot be smelt, it cannot be nothing. But yet
Yeah.
it can be fired into the air and you can see a plane coming 100 miles away. That was the great
Mm.
advantage that the English had over the Germans in the First World or the Second World War. They actually invented radar. An educated person will also know that it's the word resonance in there. Resonance theory is something real. And I used to be a civil engineer. There's a bridge out there in Washington State. It's called the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. And a light breeze, because it had the same frequency as the bridge itself. Every object has a frequency. It just so happened
Yeah.
that the light breeze had the same frequency or a multiple of that frequency. So a light breeze was enough to get that bridge actually vibrating and then wiggling, and then it completely collapsed. So any
Mm.
person that would have a degree in engineering or any field of that nature would be very familiar with resonance theory, and in actual fact,
Mm.
it's real. And the entire steel bridge collapsed. You can Google it and watch the video. It's
Mm.
absolutely amazing. But to a
Yeah.
person that hasn't studied these things or hasn't been educated now, that was 40 plus years ago when I was educated on that. That's not today nor yesterday. But these things are actually real and it's not complicated at all. It is, it's basic physics. So
Mm.
it does take a little bit of um, the ability to understand, to accept that what you are saying could in fact be true. On a different video
Yeah.
yesterday or the day before, I mentioned nanotechnology, and there isn't one person in 1,000 that's educated with nanotechnology because it's very modern and very complicated. But these little things that would be as small as a cell or almost as small as a molecule or whatever, they can emit radiation or frequencies. They can actually communicate with one another. Regular
Yeah.
people nowadays have no idea what um, high technology is involved with at all, and we only see the high technology at our civilian level. There is a laboratory out there near me in Lincoln, Massachusetts, the MIT Lincoln Laboratory, and they do research into things that people wouldn't even believe. It's like Star Wars and Star Trek, etc., stealth or
The,
whatever.
the
So
thing,
I
the thing
might
that
be,
I find,
I might be looking as if I don't believe it, but I would believe anything because I have an understanding of
the thing
physics
that I
plus
find
what we are doing.
fascinating about that particular thing with the Netflix is that the one thing I didn't want to come up on the TV is the screaming ghost face. And that's exactly what came up on the TV.
Yes, well, that
And I
could be
ended up
true.
crying. I went into my husband and said, please disconnect that TV. But we've had to disconnect the radio and stuff beside it because when we were watching, it was on standby. And every time when we'd be sitting watching the TV, the radio thing used to come on. So we had to disconnect it because it was permanently coming on without, it was so annoying by it coming on when it was on standby that we had to plug it out. But
Well,
here's the I can show you this if you like.
yeah,
So I'll just go, if I go into the complexes and I'll just take one of them. I don't want to take the coronavirus ones up, which are just stupid. So we take one of the programs, and if you then go into, and that one doesn't do it. That's typical. I'm going into the wrong thing. I should have taken an easier one.
yeah. Well, while you try to figure that out, with a bit of practice, I believe that you could sort of train yourself to have the Netflix not have horror movies come on at all, but you could actually have
Yeah,
maybe
I probably
Wanderly Wagon come on.
could back in. I did think that I
That'll
probably
be much
could, but
more soothing.
I don't want to become one of those people. I'd like to be able to do something better.
Yeah.
I don't want to become.
I think things might work out as good as possible going forward into the future.
Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to do something good,
Now,
something better than that.
talking about doing something good, having a sense of humor, having a bit of a laugh, if at all possible. Can you go back and tell us about these support groups or comfort groups that has been set up? Who's setting them up, etc.? Because I think that is exactly what might be needed here for people to get together and compare their own situations, and what works for one might be maybe it would work for somebody else as well.
Yeah, it's good, but to be honest, um, it can be very hard to get people together because people are sick and they're all over the place.
Yes, of
They're all in
course.
different
It takes an
areas,
effort.
and realistically, it doesn't get people better. I am I am involved in the CVIA, which is the kind of global coalition of vaccine injured, the worldwide, and I've been involved with them since the beginning. Um, and it's kind of, you know, there's a lot of stuff getting done there. There's nothing coming out of Ireland, of course.
Yeah.
It's
But
all other countries.
tell us about the meeting that was held that Dr. De Bruyne or whatever his name is attended. Tell us, for
Yeah,
example, that's a local little
that's
support group.
that's very good. That's Wake
Fantastic.
Up Era again. Wake Up
Those are the
Era,
people in
brilliant.
Wake Up Era.
Yeah, that's Wake Up Era. Yeah, they do wonderful work. Michelle at Wake Up Era and Idal.
Michelle and Adele.
That's
That's
their work.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I will put in a
Next one
link
is
into
three in
those.
Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe if
they're
you could
brilliant.
get more of them set up in all the little localities, it'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, Edna,
Yeah,
that
there.
was a very interesting story of your situation and how that you have been impacted by taking the jab of the dreaded
Yeah,
Astrazeneca.
something I would like to say is that
Yes,
you
anything
see
else
the
you want to add?
protocols, that does my head in. Protocols. You know, I
Can you
still have
just
people
explain to
trying to
us what
tell me to
exactly you
take
mean by
protocols.
protocols?
Protocols, Peter McCullough's protocols, etc., etc. You know, if protocols worked, we'd all be better. You know, the protocols are to push the immune system up. You know, I'm trying to suppress my immune system. You know, the first thing I did at the beginning was to try these, not not to try the protocols, but to push my immune system up, to try and clear it out, detox as they call it. You know, that was one of the first things I did. One of my cousins, distant cousin, he's involved in genealogy, is a Fitzpatrick, a guy called Mike Fitzpatrick. He's in New Zealand. He's one of the first people I contacted because he's a my brain isn't working, um, toxicologist. His PhD is in arsenic poisoning, and I gave him a shout, and he said, "Get detox IV, get vitamin C, vitamin D, glutathione, magnesium, get all these things into your arm, get it into the veins so you're not losing any of it." And I did. I went to a place up in um, Lisburn first, and then I went down to another guy who gave a larger dose, and got a huge amount of it into my system. I was onto this stuff at the beginning, you know. But for somebody whose immune system is broken, that could kill you, you know. So just tell people to stop talking about protocols. I mean, how many? We've 23,000, over 23,000 excess deaths since 2021 in Ireland for our small population. How many of them tried the protocols and it killed them, you know? So please stop telling people to try protocols. If your immune system is broken, protocols will kill you, will kill you.
Yes, well, I'll have to do some more research onto that then at some stage.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else now before we wrap up here? It's been well, it has been a very very quick hour and a very quick hour plus.
Um, just to the doctors of Ireland, if any of you are watching, stand up for the vaccine injured people, to genuinely stand up for us, not to plumose us. The vaccine injured of Ireland have been completely let down by the doctors of Ireland. They've closed the doors on us. 5 consultants have closed the door on me, 5 of them. And I wrote registered letters to the board of St. James's Hospital in Ireland, and they in Dublin, and they acknowledged them, and then they completely dismissed me. And one consultant there, who was a professor, a teaching professor, and she tried to diagnose me with the thing called FND, which is functional neurological disorder, even though the medication was working. And the therapy for FND used to be called conversion therapy. Conversion therapy. So you have to say, it's all in my mind, I'm making it up, And she does that with a lot of people. People, not necessarily vaccine injured people that are having epileptic seizures. They can be, she's diagnosing people that are having strokes and seizures and everything with FND. And that means you don't get any you don't get any kind of tests or anything. You don't get looked at again, and people aren't getting home help or anything like that if they're diagnosed with FND.
It
Of course,
seems
she's
like a
denying
good.
it.
It seems like a good excuse or a good get out of jail card free. If they don't want to deal with something, they just say
Yeah,
you've got FND,
yeah.
and
She
that's the
doesn't
end.
like vaccine
Case
injured.
case closed.
Yeah, no help for vaccine injured people by anybody. You can get long COVID help, They'll help people that have long COVID, but nothing whatsoever for vaccine injured people. Nothing
Well, that would
whatsoever.
be to
Case
accept and
closed.
admit that a mistake was made, etc. And that's
Yeah,
something people normally do not want to do in life. All
yeah.
right, Etna, it was very uplifting and very enlightening to have a chat with you. And we will check in sometime later to see how it all goes. But I can follow you anyway on numerous telegrams and Facebooks and whatnot. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much, Declan.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. God bless you.